Yeah, so that sounds pretty bad, huh? So, since I shot this video back in like November or something, I got a new phone. And in the process of doing that, I accidentally deleted the audio from all of these clips that I was supposed to sync in here. So we're doing a voiceover, and let's run it back and start over. So my buddy Garrett is a really great musician, and I've helped him with a couple projects over the years, especially with his Stubborn Son project. And he's working on some new personal stuff. So we decided we'd go out and make some night portraits that would go along with his new work, which kind of is like a kind of synth-poppy stuff. And so I thought that this shooting on film just seemed really natural. With that, I should note through this entire video, Garrett's music is going to be running in the background here. And if you want to buy any of it or listen to more of it, links are in the descriptions. Go check them out. Super good. Before I start talking too much, I just want to stop and show some of the photos, because a few of them turn out really cool, and I just want you to see that first.
There may be traps here, but in the atmosphere we can go all night. I hear the world will end, but no one is saying when. I need a plan to do this right. Call it love, call it fate.
But with that, we decided we would start at a falafel shop that's kind of near my house. We picked it because it was known for the neon signs outside the windows, and we just thought that they would make a really cool backdrop. With this, I decided that I was going to shoot it all on Cinestill 800T. I thought that the halation effect that this film was really well known for would look really cool with these portraits, and especially that's like the first thing thinking of shooting in front of this neon. I was like, that would just take that red neon there and just take it up to the next level and make it look really, really cool. With that, I knew that I didn't want to screw up his skin tone. I mean, if we're out there and we're shooting under like a yellow street light, that's going to look pretty white. But if we're shooting underneath like something that to our eyes looks white, it's probably going to end up looking really blue, and that just runs the risk of really changing skin tones, and wasn't what I wanted. I really wanted Garrett's normal skin tones to come through in this. And so with that meant that I needed to gel the flash that I was using to illuminate him. So I put a yellow filter on the flash there just to make sure that it would balance out the skin tones. I'm going to be 100% honest and say this whole thing was like a really big experiment for me, because I don't have a ton of experience of shooting at night with flashes like this, and especially to be doing it on film with two different formats, both shooting on the RZ67 with the 110 2.8 lens, and then also shooting on my EOS 3 with either the 24 or the 50mm lenses on there. It was just like it was a very different experience for me. And so with that, I also wanted to have a safety camera, and so I shot one of my digital cameras, and I just set the white balance to also be in tungsten and to also be at 800 ISO, so that it would act about the same, and I could kind of like test a scene on that and then see what it would be looking like. Which really actually helped a ton as I was trying to visualize what these images would look like, how the flash would hit, how the colors would come through. Obviously it looks different because it doesn't have, the digital doesn't have the halation and stuff, and I can add it in post, but as I'm looking in the back of the camera, it doesn't. And so it just had that much, at least to balance out the exposures. It was super helpful to have done. But even with that, I do still feel looking back on these, I wish I would have practiced with the flash just a little bit more before the session, just because I don't know, especially when you're like judging how far and like how close, how far away that flash needs to be. It just is really difficult. And I'll totally admit that part of the difficulty in this is because I'm using like wirelessly triggered speed lights rather than getting like a really good flash unit that then would be easier to trigger with a light meter or something like that I could do kind of right. I kind of am like jimmy rigging the system, and so like that just increased the difficulty of it. And I feel like some of these turned out really good, and some of them like it definitely was over, like the flash was too powerful for his face. But I don't know, I guess that's why you do these kind of experiences, to continue learning. Yep. Still no audio. So for our second location of the night, we headed to a car wash here in North Seattle, And I thought that that would look really cool in this with this particular film because it was lit by those white LEDs. And so knowing that then once it gets used on the Cinestill, those lights are going to come out really blue. And I thought that those blues with the red halation, but then with having his skin tones look right, would look really, really cool. And so that was kind of like the impetus of why we went to this particular spot. And then honestly, I think that they really turned out pretty cool. I really like some of these images. It's a funny thing when you're doing so much like stuff that is both, it's experimenting in making the photos, it's experimenting in scanning the photos and stuff. Like I feel like this is something that if I had left, I kind of wish I would have paid for them to be developed professionally, just because I feel that this is where like I can keep scanning, keep trying this, but I wish I would have had a professional eye on the scan process just to maybe normalize it a little bit. Because sometimes I feel like some of the photos like really pop and some don't, but they're on the same roll. It's just like, why is that happening? And I know it's because of my systems, but it's not something I do enough that I have the practice to get it down quite yet. But I don't know, it still was really fun to shoot and fun to try. On top of shooting the yellow filter to balance out Garrett's face, I also wanted to play around a little bit with other colors. And so I had lost my gel pack for my flash because I just couldn't find it anywhere. So I took my old trick of taking my daughter's Magnetiles, which are these like translucent colored toys, and gaffer taping those to the front of the flash and using those as gels. And so I was able to, with that, they come in red, green, blue, purple, the normal colors, but then you can also kind of like pair them together, and so you could kind of get in betweens and stuff. I've done this before in other shoots with things, so like I knew this would work. But it was the first time I've done it outside of my house. It was just fun to like, well, this is plan B, but plan B also can be kind of cool and unique too. So one thing that was really difficult for me to balance between them was to be shooting some of the photos on the 35mm film and some of them on the medium format film. And on 35, so I'm shooting at ISO 800, and I had either a 1.2 or a 1.4 lens on there. So like, I was still shooting at a 50th of a second to even up to like a 1/25th of a second. Like there was enough light that I didn't need to use a tripod for that. But at the same point, it's to use the 2.8 lens that's on the medium format. That's 2.5 stops slower. And that brings that shutter speed down to a 30th of a second and 15th of a second. And I used it on a tripod for some of the images, but I feel like I was both being a little bit lazy and not using the tripod for everything, just because I was trying to run and gun and ideas were coming to me. And so I kept trying, rather than like taking the time to like move, adjust and all this stuff, like a tripod just slows you down so much that with the medium format, I kept trying to handhold. But with that, like I know that I can't handhold my RZ67 any slower than a 30th of a second. Like it's impossible. And so unless you want movement and stuff. Like I guess I was using a flash. I could have done that intentionally, but that was, man, that's a whole nother level of complexity and stuff. Like I already felt like I was really struggling to keep up on the night. And so I just kept shooting on that low end, and then just shooting at a 30th of a second. There's a lot of these photos that I feel like don't quite have enough light balancing out the shadow areas that I wish was there. And again, I think they look cool and I think they balance out, and definitely like I think professional scanning might have made these look a little bit more uniform, but that's the thing I look back on. I was like, why just use your tripod more, dummy? It's fine. It's not that hard. Location. Hopefully this one will be pretty epic. I'll be able to step back a little bit more and create a lot more of that blue light with the halation on these photos. So sliding into this last scene that we went to, and this is the one that I was most excited about, which is why I put it last in the night, because I knew it would take us a while to work through everything and to build up to it. And so this is kind of like a courtyard outside of one of the dorms or apartments or something near the University of Washington here in Seattle. And it's right on my running route. So I'd run past it hundreds of times and always thought like, oh, those lights look really cool, which was funny because as we're driving up, Garrett's looking at me like, where are we going? What? And this is just like, welcome to the photographer's eye. You never know where inspiration's gonna strike. And so yeah, that's why we're going to Falafel, a car wash, in a dorm, and we're gonna make cool photos with it. But we got there and I just love the way that these, again, it's that white LED that's gonna be hovering above his head. And so I really wanted those to come out as with the blue light, but then with the red halation on top of those. And yeah, I feel like these photos did really turn out. It's interesting to compare the images though between the 35mm and the 120 of like the medium format of that same Cinestill 800, and that the halation is way more pronounced on the 35 than it is on the 120. And I think there's probably a couple reasons. Like, I mean, I would imagine that because I was shooting it at, like, I had wider apertures, so that allowed for more light. Like, I kind of burn in the halations a little bit more. But it's just different because the halation, I'd imagine, is going to expand about the same amount off of any given light, point of light. But on a 35, that, let's say it moves out 3 millimeters or something like that on the film stock. Well, if you're doing that on 35, 3 millimeters is 1/10 of the whole frame. If you move that to medium format, that might only be 1/30 of the width of there. And so when you pull them back and you put those side by side, even though if you actually held the films together, you would see that it's expanding the same amount, because when it expands, that the photos are the same, it's just going to look less pronounced. And that was one thing that I really do find really interesting about this. And I know, it makes me a little bit less excited to shoot Cinestill in 120, just because part of the reason I'm shooting this is because I want that halation. If I don't want the halation, I'll shoot, Loma 800, I'll shoot Porsche 800 or something like that. And obviously, like, there's the tungsten part of it and stuff. But I don't know, it just, like, part of the draw of this film is the halation, and it's definitely less pronounced in 120. And that was just an interesting thing to learn. With that, like, I really enjoyed this project. And I really enjoyed the creative process of sitting beforehand, and, like, I listened to Garrett's music a lot before I was shooting it. And I tried to take what I was hearing and put it into the images that I was doing, which is a part of a process that, like, I'm still learning how to do, but was really an interesting creative expanse for him. One thing looking back on the night also is that I was trying to shoot 2 film cameras, 1 digital camera, and then I also had another camera, as you can see, is like, the B-roll and stuff that I was shooting on the course of the night, because I was just unable to get somebody to come in and shoot. And that just was way too much for my brain for one night. And so it makes me really think about, like, I can totally see why every other famous YouTuber on here, when they're going out and doing these shoot things, has somebody come and make the video for them. And so, like, I don't know, I just learned a lot that night. I was like, I can't hold this much stuff in my brain, because then, as much as, like, I'm here and I want to be focusing on photos, it really made the video side of things be not quite as good as I wanted this to be. I mean, I wanted this video to be, like, super epic, and I don't think it's quite there yet. I mean, I like the photos. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. But I don't know. Those are my takeaways. Anyway, thanks for watching. Once again, check out Garrett's music in the link below, and I'll see you around.
I've always wanted to know the truth. Is there love on the other side? Is there a place and time for you and I in the afterlife?